the hidden village food trick that still works today. Before we get into the meat of this topic, let me welcome you back to Battlefield Survival. If you enjoy learning real historical tactics that still hold their ground today, take a second and subscribe so you never miss the strategies that shaped entire civilizations. Now let's get straight to the technique, because this one separated resilient communities from the ones that vanished during harsh seasons. How remote villages kept food stable without spoiling for months. Across Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and parts of the Horn of Africa, isolated villages depended on one method that consistently outperformed early refrigeration: controlled fermentation paired with anaerobic storage. This wasn't pickling for flavor. It was a deliberate preservation strategy built on sealing fresh produce and proteins in airtight containers. So beneficial bacteria dropped the pH, halted spoilage, and made the food safe for long periods. Communities relied on clay crocks sunk into cool soil, wooden barrels sealed with animal fat, and sometimes leather sacks buried under shade. The environment never fluctuated, which prevented mold and kept fermentation predictable. The brilliance of this trick is that it required almost no fuel, no ice, and no ongoing work. How villagers created a stable food reserve using simple fermentation ratios. The core technique was straightforward: salt at 2 to 3% of the food's weight, remove as much air as possible, and keep the container cool and dark. That ratio was consistent from Baltic sauerkraut to Caucasian preserved herbs to Himalayan fermented radish. Salt forced moisture out, creating an automatic brine. So, once the vegetables or meat were submerged, they stayed below oxygen exposure, which, let lactic acid bacteria take over. Villagers would just check for gas pressure and made sure the lids were weighted down, so nothing would float up. If they did everything right, the food kept all its nutrients and, actually, it often became easier to digest. That was super important, especially during those long winters or times when food was really scarce, like during wartime shortages. Now, here's the thing. This ancient method, it's actually a modern survival tool too. The value of this technique honestly hasn't dropped at all. It still works great in off-grid cabins, remote camps, survival retreats, and even in small city apartments. All you really need is salt, a container, and a cool spot to make it happen. For example, let's say a prepper lives far from any reliable power. Well, they can keep a year-round supply of nutrient-dense veggies by fermenting cabbage, carrots, radishes, or green beans. Or maybe a homesteader has extra meat from raising livestock. They can preserve that by dry salting and sealing it up in airtight crocks, then keeping those underground. Even folks in the city who are into survival stuff can turn a closet into a controlled fermenting area just by using jars with airlocks and storing them in insulated boxes to keep the temperature steady. So the same principles apply today: oxygen out, salt in, temperature down. So here's how you can actually apply this in real survival scenarios. If your power drops for, say, a week, you can just take fresh produce that's about to spoil, slice it up, salt it by weight, and pack it tightly into jars. And within just a few days, you've created a stable food supply that doesn't rely on electricity at all. If you're running a long-term camp or maybe a training site, burying a sealed fermentation container just a few inches below the ground surface gives you a natural temperature buffer. This makes the food secure without needing to check on it every single day. When you're traveling in remote terrain where carrying heavy rations isn't really ideal, fermenting lightweight vegetables before the trip actually reduces the need for those bulky coolers and keeps all the nutrients intact. If you want more historical survival systems that still outperform modern solutions, go ahead and subscribe to Battlefield Survival and share this guide with someone who takes history as seriously as you do.